Hello everybody, my name is Nathan, and I am the man with a cartoon obsession. I don't know if you guys know this, but I watch a lot of cartoons. Sometimes I watch them with the intent of reviewing them. More often than not though, I watch them for fun, and if I feel like reviewing them at some point, so be it. The show I'm going to talk about today falls into the latter category. I know I'm late with this one, but I just recently watched this show, and I wasn't planning on making this video originally, but I really want to talk about this show. Without any further ado, let's get right into my cartoon review of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts. Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts is a cartoon that was based on the webcomic called Kipo. The show was created by Radford Sechrist and developed by Bill Wolkoff. The series was produced by DreamWorks Animation Television and animated by Studio Mir. If you're not familiar with Studio Mir, they worked on shows such as The Legend of Korra, The Boondocks, and Voltron Legendary Defender. It's obvious what to expect from that anime-influenced art style, but it's such a great style that it's hard to go wrong. Moving right along, the series is on Netflix, and it ran from January 14th, 2020 to October 12th, 2020. It consisted of 30 episodes and ran over the course of 3 seasons. I should put a spoiler alert here because I'm afraid I'll give away too many details for people who have yet to watch the show. The series takes place in a post-apocalyptic setting known as Las Vistas and follows Kipo Oak on her journeys. Season 1 is her trying to find her dad and the rest of her people from her home when it was destroyed. Season 2 is her battle against Scarlemagne, one of the villains, and Season 3 is her battle against a different villain with different ambitions, as well as building bonds between the humans and mutants. What makes the journey treacherous is the fact that the surface world has been overrun by said mutants, or mutes, as they're referred to in the show. All of the humans live in underground burrows because humans and mutes don't get along. When I mentioned that Kipo's home was destroyed, I should mention that it was destroyed by a mute. The conflict doesn't end there though, because even on the surface, the different species of mutes fight against each other. All of this fighting creates this ravaged post-apocalyptic world that we see in the show. Just so you guys are aware, I'm all about post-apocalyptic settings in cartoons. It creates an interesting and tense atmosphere. You hope everything works out, but you know it won't be easy for it to get to that point, if it even does. Something I should mention about the mutes is the fact that there's a variety of them called megamutes. Basically, they're very large and powerful creatures that both humans and mutes fear. I'll talk a little more about that in a minute, but for now I want to get into some of the characters. Of course, I have to start with the titular protagonist, Kipo Oak. I mentioned that she lived in a burrow, so she knows nothing about the surface world in the beginning. A good chunk of the first season shows Kipo learning about her new surroundings, finding new things, seeing new creatures, and making new friends. I don't fully know why, but I always like seeing that type of experience. It shows a level of innocence that I just cannot hate. Kipo isn't completely clueless about the surface though. She did learn about aspects of the surface while she lived in the burrow. For example, she's very much into astronomy, despite never being able to see the stars. In fact, she's really into science and math in general. She always geeks out about that sort of stuff, which I also like about her. Kipo is friendly and energetic, which is what I expect out of a protagonist like this, but I still really enjoy her as a character. Naturally, she provides many of the show's best moments.
There's a wire back here, if I could just get to it. That works too.
This is where I start to get into sort of heavy spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen the show and don't want to be spoiled, this is your last chance to back out. I mentioned megamutes earlier and how much they were feared by everyone. Well, what I didn't mention was that Kipo is a megamute. It was an experiment that was performed on her by her parents before she was even born. She learns about this bit by bit throughout the show, and her abilities are revealed one by one until we see her full transformation. The experiment was performed because Kipo's parents wanted her to protect the humans and change the world. The whole process is a big learning experience for Kipo. She goes through a lot of trials and tribulations, which makes for many deep moments and fun ones as well. The journey turns Kipo into a well-rounded character in my opinion. She learns how to become a leader, she learns to give others second chances, and she learns how harsh reality can be sometimes. Since this show is targeted towards a younger demographic, I should mention that I believe those are all important messages for children to learn, but I'm not going to dwell on that kind of thing too much. I said Kipo makes some friends, so let's talk about them. The first friend she makes is a mute pig, or boar technically, whom she names Mandu, after Korean dumplings. Mandu is a lovable animal companion. She doesn't talk, but that doesn't mean she doesn't add anything to the show. In fact, she plays a major role in several plans and encounters throughout the series. Next is Wolf, a young orphan girl who lives on the surface and fights to survive. We don't know her real name, and for that matter, neither does she. Kipo calls her Wolf because she wears a wolf pelt. She hates mutes, and she's really not too fond of other humans either. She's a loner, but of course, spending time with Kipo and the others warms her icy heart slowly but surely. She's another character that gets a lot of development, and she's another one of my favorites. I'm a fan of the more serious character who slowly begins to come around, and Wolf is a good portrayal of that character type. Not to mention her backstory is pretty upsetting, and it just makes me feel for her even more. And I can't forget to mention that she has the best fighting skills out of the main group. She might just be a little kid, but she's also pretty badass.
I hate wolves.
Rounding out the main group are Benson, Meckler, and Dave. They're both scavengers, and they just look for the life of luxury. Benson's a human, and Dave's a mute bug, but they're best friends. Benson is the voice of reason in the group, and a very good one at that. He has heart-to-heart talks with both Kipo and Wolf, and he always gets his point across. As for Dave, he's the comic relief character, and you guys know how much I like that character type. Dave changes forms often, and he tries to be useful, but more often than not he fails. He's hilarious, though.
Oh, the spirits are mad. We invaded their space. We need to leave now. Everybody follow me.
I also just like Benson and Dave's best friend dynamic. They have each other's backs, and that behavior translates to the larger group setting perfectly. The main cast build a strong bond as a whole throughout their journeys. They do have some conflicts with one another, but there are also many touching moments between them. It's both a fun and emotional ride watching them all grow closer together. The show has a wide array of supporting characters as well, and I'll get through as many as I can. I'll start with Kipo's parents, Leo and Song. Right off the bat, I think the sacrifices they make are well executed. Some are noble, and some could be viewed as selfish, but given the circumstances, I understand why they do what they do. Especially Song, who's unfortunately absent for Kipo's childhood. I really enjoy what we do see of her, though. She's a caring mother who's willing to do whatever it takes for Kipo to have a good life. The same goes for Leo. He's a great father to Kipo. He is one of those corny dads, which I also enjoy about him, but he's serious when he needs to be. After all, like I said, he makes some tough decisions. You can't be a goofball through all that. Scar LeMain is one of the main villains in the show. He's a mute mandrill who's very intelligent. In fact, I learned a new word from him while watching this show, that being habiliments, which means clothing. Anyway, Scar LeMain's goal is to become emperor and rule over everybody, humans and mutes. He feels like a legitimate threat, which makes him a believable villain right off the bat. Not to mention his motives are sound, due to his backstory. What I really like about him is that when he is inevitably defeated, he doesn't just magically turn over a new leaf. He has a redemption arc, but it's gradual. I like that because while I believe that people can change, it doesn't happen overnight. In animation though, they tend to rush the change of heart. I'm glad this doesn't happen with Scar LeMain. It makes him a more relatable character. The other main villain is Dr. Amelia. She gets a backstory too, and her motives make sense to me as well, but she's a whole different beast. She wants to rid the world of mutes. She creates a cure that turns them back into regular animals. That way humans can once again live on the surface. Of course, Kipo wants humans and mutes to live together in harmony, but Amelia wants no part of that. Unlike Scar LeMain, she's not very sympathetic, nor is she redeemable. However, I like that about her. I despise the character, but she's an evil villain. The point is to dislike her, and she is a great despicable villain. As for some of the other characters I like, there's Jamak, who's a mute frog. His design reminds me of LaFrog from Flushed Away for some reason, even though they don't really look that much alike. Jamak is a villain turned anti-hero turned hero. He goes through a lot of development as well, perhaps not to the same extent as other characters, but I really grew to like him. He serves his purpose well, and is a great help to Kipo and her friends. And I'll just get this out of the way right now, there's a group of mutes called the Timber Cats, who are giant cat lumberjacks. You guys know me, I adore cats, so I'm all about this idea. My favorite out of the group is their leader, Yum-Yum Hammerpaw. He's another character who greatly assists Kipo in her endeavors, and he has the best catchphrase in the whole show.
Yum-Yum knows you.
There are other cool characters that I'm just going to go through rapid-fire style, such as the Dubstep Bees, the Newton Wolves, the Humming Bombers, the Fitness Raccoons, the Umlaut Snakes, Tad Mulholland, Troy, Asher and Dahlia Birdax, Greta. I'd keep going, but if I don't shut up now, we'll be here all day. I'm not done talking about the characters yet, though, because there's one big thing I want to talk about, and that's the diversity in the cast. I'll be honest, that's not usually in the front of my mind, because of course people, and even fictional characters, aren't identified solely by their race, or gender, or sexuality, or religion. Those are important parts of our identities, of course, but there's more to any person than just those aspects, like our personalities, our behavior, etc. That being said, I cannot and will not ignore how important diversity is, and over the past few years, we've seen plenty of cartoons embrace this. We've seen more shows that have LGBTQ+ characters or protagonists of varying races. We've also seen more female protagonists, and some cartoons have incorporated some religiously diverse characters as well. This isn't really a new thing, but we didn't see casts like these as much prior to the last decade. This may not be the first show to implement a diverse cast, but it certainly has one. The main group is made up of Benson and Wolf, who are both black, and Kipo, who is biracial as she has a black dad and a Korean mom. The supporting cast of humans is also varied. In fact, there are only a handful of white human characters in the show. Not to mention, Benson is openly gay, and when he comes out in the show, he just says it point blank.
You should know something.
You like me as a friend?
Yes! Because I'm gay.
I wasn't expecting that to be so blunt, but I'm honestly glad it was. A lot of cartoons just show it, but don't say it, which I'm also cool with. This was just a nice change of pace, and he's immediately accepted, which I always like to see. Not only that, but Troy was confirmed to be pansexual, Asher was confirmed to be non-binary, and there are other identity-related things that aren't officially canon, but if you aren't aware of them, you can explore those for yourselves. My point is, there are a lot of different types of characters here, both humans and mutes. That's another reason the diversity stands out to me in the show. There's a lot of hatred and tension between humans and mutes, just like tensions between different kinds of people in the real world. Obviously, it's more child-friendly than the stuff we see in the real world, but I still think it showcases the reality of this type of situation well. I just hope we can all live in harmony in the real world too. Wow, I got really serious there. I'm not used to that, but sometimes when I get started, I can't stop. Let's get back on track. The voice acting is also superb. I can't think of anyone who isn't cast perfectly, but I'll go through some of my personal favorites. Karen Fukuhara is perfect as Kipo. She really captures her energetic nature, and her range adds to this already dynamic character. Dion Cole is great as Dave. His delivery on the comedic lines never fails. Dan Stevens plays a believable villain as Scarlet with his impeccable tone of voice, and how can I not mention Steve Blum as Yum Yum? This character is made for him. On a semi-related note, it's nice that the dialogue in the show isn't bogged down with modern slang. That happens in a lot of cartoons, and I think it's alright in moderation, but some shows go overboard with it, and it has the potential to date those shows, like Rocket Power for example. That's why it's great that this show doesn't rely on those terms. It'll help it feel timeless as the years go by. Now, I have to talk about the art style and animation. Like I mentioned earlier, the show was animated by Studio Mir, and I love their style. The character designs are also detailed and varied. I love the looks of all the different humans and mutes. Not to mention there are some very unique looking characters like Kipo, just to state the obvious. The designs for the mutes are pretty cool as well. A lot of them give me Ben 10 Alien Force vibes. I also love the colorful backgrounds. The world that this takes place in may be ravaged, but it still looks incredible. The animation itself is also fantastic. The characters' movements are fluid, the facial expressions always convey the right emotions, and the fight scenes, as TVY7 appropriate as they are, look intense. They get away with as much as they can, given the demographic they aimed for. And can we talk about the music for a second? Daniel Rojas was the composer for the soundtrack, and he deserves a lot of praise. The assortment of music used for the show score covers a wide variety of events and conveys a lot of different emotions. I can say the same thing about the other music that the show uses as well from various artists, mainly in the pop, hip-hop, and electronic genres. Whether they're songs that play over a flashback, montage, fight scene, whatever it may be, they fit flawlessly. Especially the show's theme song, both the short version that's in the intro in every episode, and the full version we hear at the very end of the series. I tell you, once you see the end of the show, that song hits much differently. I cannot stress how much a good soundtrack can make a show feel complete. Music isn't the most important part in a cartoon, which is a primarily visual medium, but it can add a whole new layer to it, and the soundtrack for the show does just that. I also want to commend the show for its attention to detail. For example, a character is transformed into a Megamute, and when they revert back to human form after years of being a Megamute, they have trouble speaking for a while. Not a lot of cartoons would put that much thought into how transformations can alter characters long term, so kudos for that. I guess I should start talking about the issues I have with this show, huh? Well, the thing is, I really don't have any. Sure, I think the show plays things safe sometimes, and there are a number of predictable plot points, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's okay to know your destination. The most important part is the journey, and the journey this show took me on was magnificent. There are also aspects of the show that aren't explicitly mentioned, like what caused the mutant outbreak or why Kipo's skin is purple. Well, what caused the mutant outbreak doesn't make much of a difference to me personally. Not knowing it actually makes things a little more interesting. And as for Kipo's purple skin, I'm assuming it's a cause of the genetic mutation, but I could be wrong. It doesn't bother me anyway. It obviously doesn't bother the characters in the show either, as it's never brought up. Considering everything else going on in this world, I can understand why nobody's concerned about something so minor in comparison. And I guess I could nitpick about not getting the happiest ending ever, but in real life, not everybody gets a happy ending. And that's showcased well here. Plus, I love the ending. It may not have been consequence-free, but it was still a feel-good moment, and that last few minutes in the final episode is one of my favorite parts of the entire series, both the ending and the epilogue. Would I like to see more of the show? Certainly, but I'm taking it as it is because that's how it was presented to me. It just hits all the right notes for me. This is a show that I felt like just kept getting better with every single episode, and that's a rarity in not just animation, but TV shows in general. Guys, have you ever watched a show, and then once it was over, you just had no idea what to say or think, but you knew that show was going to stick with you for a long time? That's exactly how I felt when I finished Kipo. I was at a loss for words, a loss for thoughts. I was getting choked up even. I felt like I watched something truly special. I've only felt that way after watching a handful of other shows, so whenever I get that feeling, I know it means something. I didn't have any expectations heading into this show, and it just completely blew me away. Which is why I'm giving Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts a perfect 10 out of 10. This is currently a front runner for my top cartoons of the 2020s. Granted, it's still very early in the decade, and this isn't even the first cartoon I've said this about, admittedly, but this is the first one I've given a perfect score to. Sure, the scores may be arbitrary, but take it for what it's worth. What I said is truly the way I feel about this show. It's a mind-blowing adventure that just took my breath away. Now, something greater could come along in the coming years to take its spot, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Show up, we gon' rise up both here. Life's a party, under the sun, been through it all.
Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you have any other cartoons, anime, or other animated works that you want me to talk about in the future, please let me know. After all, it's not my channel, it's our channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and feel free to check out my social media pages, audition for an outro, and join the official Cartoon Obsession Discord, the links for all of which are in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
I'm Paradot, and thank you for watching Cartoon Obsession.